While you may look at a photo, a painting, or film and think that everything you see is there for its entertainment value, or how much it excites you, the fact is they are often constructed for much more than that. Images have always been used to promote a certain idea or ideology, from Rosie the Riveter showcasing the might of women in the workforce, to the much more sinister anti Semitic propaganda of Nazi Germany. For better or worse, images have always had the potential to liberate and to limit. But those are two very black and white examples, as close to perfect representations of good and evil as one can get. What about more complex depictions of race, gender, and sexuality within our visual culture? How do they liberate us? How do they limit? Even the most well intentioned pieces of art, ones that claim and often do promote an idea of tolerance and humanization of otherwise dehumanized demographics, are not without their faults. They're blind spots. These images have the potential to liberate, to bring a light to injustices in our society, but they can also limit our view of what constitutes a fair and balanced representation of these injustices. Furthermore, and less from the standpoint of the artist's intent and more from a purely audience response standpoint, any depiction of race or gender or sexuality, whether it's fair and balanced or purely one sided, can change minds, propagandize, or indoctrinate, or they can cause a complete refusal of the ideology promoted by the image. To start, I'd like to look at two specific films, released about 10 years apart, stylistically very different, about arguably wildly different subjects, but with the same underlying intent, and as a result, many of the same triumphs and many of the same failings at expressing their intent. I'm talking, of course, of the classic Spike Lee joint, 1989's Do the Right Thing, and the Jamie Babbitt film released in 2000, an arguably less classic, But I'm a Cheerleader. One, the story of a young man living in a community ridden with poverty, watching as racism and vitriol is directed towards him and his friends. Watching as his people, black people, are continually given the short end of the stick and underrepresented in their own community. Till one day, all the growing tension erupts into fiery carnage and catharsis for the Bed-Stuy neighborhood. The other, a coming-of-age film about Megan, an innocent Christian teenage cheerleader who, unbeknownst to her, is a lesbian. Her friends and family come together to help her by sending her off to a gay conversion camp with a former gay counselor, played by RuPaul of all people. While attending the camp, she meets another recovering homosexual girl named Graham, who is forced into the camp by her father and stepmother. They fall in love. But what do these films have in common? What is their underlying theme that is so similar? What about their triumphs, their failures? Well, both these films are focused heavily on humanizing one specific subjugated demographic. In Do the Right Thing, it's African Americans. In But I'm a Cheerleader, it's lesbians. These character types, in their respective films, are treated with the utmost care, created with depth of character and varying motivations and backgrounds. In Do the Right Thing, every character has a different relationship to Sal, from Mookie's tenuous friendship to Buggin' Out's anger. In But I'm a Cheerleader, Graham is the archetypal tomboy lesbian seen through history as the depiction of most lesbians. And she is also racked with guilt for her lack of femininity brought on by her family's disappointment in her. Megan is and continues throughout the film, despite realizing she is in fact a lesbian, maintains her own archetypal femininity, rebelling against popular culture's archetypal lesbian. There's even a character, Jan, who seems the most tomboyish of all. She has short hair and a mohawk. She speaks with a deeper voice, and she likes sports, but as it turns out,
I'm a heterosexual.
Uh, Not yet, honey. You're almost there. And don't speak out of turn.
No, I know. I've never been gay.
Jan, remember, you were molested. I mean, just take a look at yourself.
I mean, everybody thinks I'm this big dyke because I wear baggy pants, I play softball, and I'm not as pretty as other girls, but it doesn't make me gay. I mean, I like guys.
she is not gay. This is an important moment in the film that reminds us that femininity, or lack thereof, does not make one gay or straight, It is a moment where we are made to understand that judgment based on sexuality is ridiculous. Both these films take great care and pride in humanizing these characters. So, what's the problem with them? The problem, and please don't take this out of context, is that Spike Lee is black and Jamie Babbitt is lesbian. But black people and lesbians aren't the only subjugated people depicted in their films.
What's the date on them? The date, the fucking date. What? Can you fucking speak English?
The old adage, write what you know, rings true here. Spike Lee wrote, alongside his carefully crafted and deep black characters, superficially stereotyped Korean characters. They can't speak English, they run a 7-Eleven type convenience store, they're very aggressive when they think their honor has been challenged. They are shown in quite a derogatory light, the very opposite of the supposed intent of the artist, Spike Lee. In But I'm a Cheerleader, similarly, Jamie Babbitt wrote what she knew very well. But what she didn't know as well, life as a young gay man, was not met with the same care. As an example, watch this clip from the film.
Give it to me! Give it! I'm open!
Boys! Don't you see how sad and pathetic you all are?
Every one of those kids is effeminate. There's no variety in characters. They're all the archetypal, stereotypical gay men. They speak with high, lispy voices. They can't throw a football, and they can't control themselves when an especially attractive man comes into view. I don't mention these flaws to disparage the work of these artists, as these films have done so much not only to help humanize and normalize the lives and lifestyles of the characters portrayed, but also to inspire people who identified with the artists to create their own works that built upon their theses. I mention these flaws instead to show that no one image can perfectly encapsulate the struggles of every subjugated people from every demographic. And so more people whose stories have not been told must create their own images to make up for the blind spots in others' work, and to be secure in knowing that others will make up for their inevitable blind spots. But that was all about the choices the artist makes. What about the audience? How can one image liberate and limit an audience's perception? How can two people see something so different from looking at the same thing? For an example, we go back to Do the Right Thing, with the death of Radio Raheem. It was meant to be a shockingly realistic depiction of police brutality, violence, and racism, and it was and it continues to be to this day. Many people look past that as an example of violence within the film. They instead, overwhelmingly so, look forwards look towards nonviolent acts such as screaming and yelling and playing music too loud, all perpetrated by the black characters, as the most pressing examples of violence in the film, not the actual murder of an unarmed man whose only arguable crime was disturbing the peace, on its own an inherently nonviolent crime. So this scene, which the artist intended as a commentary on the racism of the police force and the subjugation of black people, was viewed as nothing more than a policeman doing his job. But why can some people see it for what it was meant to be, and others can't? I don't think it comes from malicious intent, for the most part, although there are definitely those who are violently white supremacist, and as such tend to side with white characters in any context. But it simply comes from ignorance. They have never experienced police brutality, or even sought out the opinions of those who have. Even white people who have done this have a hard time understanding the real impact on minority communities that over-policing and institutionalized racism has, because to those of the white race, police are there to serve and protect, and institutions have treated us kindly. So there's a complacency that we've been bred into. We don't see the negative effects of these institutions, so to us, they don't exist. We don't want our institutions to keep minorities from knocking us from our ivory towers, but deep down, as much as it hurts to hear it, We kinda do.